We're opening our season with my new version of Swan Lake, taking the role of our new Swan Queen, the exquisite Nina Sayers.
There's so many interesting things about Swan Lake, the ballet. First is the white swan and the black swan, both played by the same dancer. So it's one of the most complicated and difficult ballets for a dancer to undertake. And why it's interesting for a dancer is the dancer gets to show so many different shades of herself. As the Queen Swan, she gets to play the innocent, the scared, afraid bird.
I'm still working in here.
When she becomes the Black Swan in the third act, she gets to play a seductress.
Leroy, the dance director, has sort of been urging Nina to find in her dancing, to let loose, to let go, to not be so rigid, not to be so safe.
Watch the way she moves. Sensual. She's not faking it.
Vincent wants Natalie's character Nina to have the passion of the Black Swan and the sexuality of the Black Swan, and my character tries to like make her be free and try to make her relax and tries to sympathize with her, but it innately just makes everything go back.
I think he really falls in love with perfection and beauty, you know, and he wants that girl to get there, whatever it takes.
That was me seducing you, when it needs to be the other way around.
Please.
The role is starting to possess her and overtake her.
The only person standing in your way is you.
I think as the film progresses and more pressure is put on her, she starts to descend into a kind of more and more unsteady darkness.
It's the role, isn't it? It's all this pressure. I knew it'd be too much. I knew it.
It's sort of an identity crisis where she's not really sure of who she is.
Sweet girl. Sweet girl. What happened to my sweet girl? She's gone!
We are at the first day of shooting. We're in Queens, at Queens Plaza. Oh, here comes our train.
Enter the train. We're going outbound. So when you go down to the platform, you go to the end of the platform on the Jamaica-bound side, and we're in the last two cars.
I was reading Dostoevsky's The Double, which is about a guy who wakes up and his double's there starting to replace his life, and was thinking about how to do something with it. And I went to see Swan Lake at the ballet, and didn't know that one dancer played two roles, a white swan and a black swan. And it was sort of an aha moment, because I realized that there was the story of a double here, except it was better in its own way, because the white swan and the black swan was such beautifully drawn characters, and I felt I could really build on that and turn it into something.
We're at Lincoln Center. This is day 1 of 42. We only have 1 week of exteriors though, so the cold shouldn't be too bad. The wrestler was way worse.
She'll start to look, and she starts to look, it's kind of motivate you, and then
she's gonna have to give us a turn.
And she's gonna give you a turn, get right in front of her. I want to see into her eyes here.
Fundamentally, I go into every film trying to figure out what the balance of dark and light is, and I go into every film trying to use lighting to create an atmosphere for that film. In Black Swan, it was just literally trying to figure out how to make the film look as naturalistic as possible.
Well, we shot a total of 43 days. You know, starting that way was tough. It was tough on the crew, it was tough on morale. you know, to just start a shoot and go into winter nights in New York City.
Still gets my art director. It's still beautiful. Is that us?
Yeah, it's us.
We have a limit how many people can be over there and have to be 3 feet away from the stage.
So the camera comes here, over here, right? Start to come up.
One of Darren's big interests in filmmaking, I think, is subjectivity, and making sure that you're always telling the story from the point of view of your main character. The film is a fable, and it's in a lot of ways it's a ballet, but the way that influenced us is that we took a lot of elements from Swan Lake that aren't necessarily explicit and sprinkled them throughout.
And cut. That's great.
You know,
as you may have heard.
Yeah, as some of you might know by now, you know.
Oh shit, I'm there again. Different show.
She'll be giving her last farewell performance as Melpomene in the role she originated in my first ballet. My little princess, we'll miss you, but you'll never be forgotten. This is Dr. Brinson and her husband, Freddie. Tonight's sponsors.
Such a beautiful event.
Oh, not as beautiful as you, my dear.
And this is Mr. and Mrs. Stein.
It's a pleasure. It's so lovely.
Oh, thank you.
A screenplay really is, by design, meant to be a springboard for like everyone else who would become involved in the films. In the case of Black Swan, it was definitely, I felt like I was in very good company, and felt like at the end of the day they were all going to make me look very, very good. I think in the best case scenario, you take something like that and then you see how it actually gets realized, and every step of that realization is sort of like, oh, it's just getting better and better and better. That's honestly how I felt in this case.
In the room, the camera will come out and look this way at the end. We're going to be heading that direction, okay? So everything is safe around the corner there. Everything in the hallway, both directions is in, and this room will be sealed. So if you're in there, it's a bad place to be.
I'm nothing. 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 No. Nothing. Nothing. Fucking nothing.
Cut. Good. Very nice. Check the gate. Okay, let's shoot.
Okay, picture's done. Let's close 13A, guys.
One of the reasons I love working with Darren Aronofsky is there are directors and there are filmmakers. He is truly a filmmaker. He approaches this film from such a wide range of ideas, and he's very open to ideas. I was presented with every version of Swan Lake imaginable. Go away, come back, let me know your thoughts.
And action.
Mom? Where do you want me to go?
It's a combination of everybody walking into a set that is now dressed. Then the actors walk into a set that's now dressed. They take it in for a moment. Maddie and Darren will block out exactly where we're seeing the set. So then it becomes a scramble of redressing the set to that blocking. Sometimes the blocking is incredibly organic. I have to quickly change around to make sure that those backgrounds look as best as possible.
up and being the end of the day, and it was probably like 3 in the morning, and Darren just had the camera on me, and in like 5 minutes just kept it rolling, and then would just be like, start again, and gave me a very specific direction right at the beginning of each time, and had me do it like, you know, just a run of it like 20 times in a row, but giving me all these different things. Now do it this, now that, now that. And it was so, I mean, that's just where he's great, because he's able to really focus at the hardest moment and be really specific, and also try a real range of possibilities.
I'm incredibly proud to have worked with a director that knows how to push people, but is such a great collaborator that you want to be pushed. This one was very challenging, not only for the budget, but the time schedule was so tight. But I also find that on movies like this, when you have those restrictions, first thought, best thought. I truly believe in that, and this is such a good example of that.
Max in the POV, which is the this 9.5 lens underwater.
Yeah.
We're gonna drop 2 drops right by lens. Bloop, bloop. And then Natalie will go. Bloop up.
We won't do the close focus. The tightness that you make this actually determines how close you can focus it. So to have this be completely accurate, it really has to be completely tight. Yeah, you will.
You know, we wanted a POV, a subjective POV, which Darren loves, of Nina in the bathtub. It was one of the large scare moments in the film, but it was simply an underwater periscope.
You're gonna do a thing.
They were unpainted. So I put all the color on it, and now I'm aging.
What are you using that? What is that? A stain?
No, this is tinted wallpaper paste. It dries dead flat, and it comes off. If I need to get it off, it'll come off.
So I would do these big breakdowns for each location. I would pin them up on the wall. They would have details for each room, where particular elements went, where to prioritize each room, which is hard because ideally you want to dress and create everything in 360, but when you have a limited budget, I really had to ask Maddie constantly, what are we seeing? What are we seeing? What are we seeing? Let me use my favorite elements, the most important elements in those particular areas.
It's all in the detail. Erica's bedroom.
Who did all the drawings?
The art interns. It's Rothbart. This wallpaper we made. I've made these sun prints upstate. We made wallpaper out of it.
So what happens to everything when it's done? Like when we're all wrapped, what happens?
We usually have to store hero locations. It depends on the studio, it depends on the movie. Sometimes everybody can buy a piece, the art department sale. I don't know what they want to save yet on this one.
The mirrors were an obvious challenge, you know, and also they were always going to be a big part of the film because first and foremost is because mirrors are, you know, omnipresent in the ballet world. Ballet dancers are constantly examining themselves in mirrors, you know, looking at their line, looking at how they, you know, move. And so we always knew the mirror would be a big part of it, and reflection was part of it.
The idea of reflections, which not only did we use reflections in actual mirrors, but any surface where we could get a reflection, we utilized. And there were reflections of both Nina and Lily, but they would intermix and you weren't quite sure who you were looking at. Often that was the gist of the use of the mirror in the film.
We knew reflection was going to be a major visual part of the language. And then it became about how to take that sort of cliche mirror gag, which you've seen in so many films. It's one of the earliest horror gags, and try to do something new with it and try to make it, more compelling and more different and more freaky. That was the challenge, was coming up with shots and effects that could really push the mirror gag.
Mirrors are just so prevalent in ballet that they had to play a part. And we exploited reflections in the same way in her apartment. Not only did she have a mirror in their living room because that's where she practiced, there was reflective surfaces everywhere, and what the aim is to try to have so many of them that some of them we could throw away and some of them we could exploit. There were practical elements to them, and there were digital elements to it that made the whole thing work. But again, I can't say enough about how, through Therese, through Darren, everything was set up properly in terms of embracing the idea of using mirrors.
They're seeing Brendan in a mirror, but the mirror that they're seeing him in is in another mirror above the bed, which is next to another mirror that they could potentially see him in. And he's going around this giant stalactite chandelier thing, which is also in the mirror. It's great. It's been a cakewalk, really. I can do this myself.
Oh, here it is. 3 simple letters. ADR.
You can basically edit, color, and mix and score an entire film on a laptop for under $5,000 if you just roll up your sleeves and do the work. So, while it is very hard to get independent films financed today, I think there are tremendous opportunities for young filmmakers to make films that didn't exist 10, 15 years ago.
Well, Scott and I always felt that what we really needed was to, find spaces that really worked together because we were working with such a small budget. And so we had dreamed about finding some type of university or some type of institution that could sort of do really play for, the New York State Theater or the Met Opera. Getting a stage in New York was close to near impossible because all the stages in New York are in constant use. It's a cultural city that's constantly using. So to take it over like you do with a film was very hard. But SUNY Purchase, which is known for its arts and has incredible professional spaces and stages, actually happen to be on winter break. So it really worked out, very well.
Straight into the lens. And action. Cut. Good call. Spinning it the wrong way. Action. Cut. Good. Cut. Hold on. Let me hear you sing Swan Lake.
You what?
Do Swan Lake.
Spread this.
Okay. Let's get ready, Tracy.
Darren decided to shoot the film in a documentary style, which kind of grounds it in a reality, even though the narrative is kind of bold and extreme and a little baroque. It was trying to find a balance between these verite elements and the genre elements, the scarier elements, the horror stuff. So we took the verite style of the movie and the performances, which are very naturalistic, and did a lot of things in post with sound and music and editing to emphasize things as being a little off and a little bit surreal.
It's a good shot. Through him. Through him. It's a shot we were going to get up 32-3, but we didn't get. Yeah, just stay one place and they'll come in and out.
He gives you direction as a cinematographer, he gives you direction as a production designer, and he gives you direction as an editor. So you going in, you know what your parameters are. So it's actually, although he gives you the freedom to work, he gives you the world to work in, so that you're not flying around aimlessly.
I was a little nervous to take on something like Swan Lake because it's such a, an epic piece of performance. I knew I had a lot to learn, but I think that's the excitement of filmmaking, is that you get sort of thrown into these new worlds, and you get a crash course, and you get to surround yourself with a lot of experts and people who spend their lives studying this stuff, and so they can fill in a lot of the holes. Well, with the choreography, I hired a man named Benjamin Millepied, who's a young choreographer who is also a principal dancer at the New York City Ballet and is very, very respected in the choreography world. It was an interesting collaboration because normally when I work with actors, I'll talk to them about story and they'll turn into emotion. With Benjamin, I would talk to him about story and he would turn it into movement. That was a fun collaboration to see how he could express through movement, what was going on in the story. And then on top of that, of course, Natalie would then perform it and put her own emotion into the movement.
Well, 6 months before shooting started, I started serious ballet training, 5 hours a day of ballet and sort of cross-training to try and make sure that I wouldn't get injured going into the stuff too quickly because it's so harsh on the bodies.
I'm, really lucky to work with such talented people, and then they're going to have ideas that are going to be awesome. That's the same thing with actors. It's like you can have an idea of what the script's telling you, but it doesn't mean anything till an actor tries it on and sees what comes out of them, and then you have to work with that because you can't force what they're doing into a mold because you'll suck the life out of it. Actors have to be free, and I think your collaborators have to be free to express ideas and come up with ideas.
Actually, this side's better. So
yeah, I agree. It's more depth.
One of the most important qualities of any director is that they're decisive, and Darren's able to recognize right away what's important to telling the story and what isn't, and when there's a happy accident that he didn't necessarily plan on, how to immediately grab on it and make good use of it in the film.
Or actually, camera's over that shoulder. She's going to go that way. You could turn this way to see her go. Okay?
This way to see her go.
And then wonder what's going on, and then you're going to go. Okay, that's all fine. Okay? Let's try it again.
I'll put that wheel on with some digs.
I shoot digital stills because I'm obsessed with exposure, and I set the camera up with the same parameters that I'm setting up on the film stock, and I shoot at the same stop so I can get a sense of depth of field. It's part of the process. It's the light meter, it's my spot meter, it's my digital camera, and that's how I find where I want to put the film.
You know what I need? I need that 14 on a stick, guys.
The question is, how do I get into this room here? I guess, I could just go to the wide shot.
You know, like when you go to the dentist and they drilled into your tooth, and then they blow it out, you know, with water, and you put your tongue in there, and it's a big opening and like a lot of pain. That's not where we are. Working with actors is all about trust and getting them to take chances and getting them to put their emotions out there on film and to show themselves. I just work hard with actors, telling them that I'm there to protect them and let them explore and to really go for something. So in general, actors, that's what actors want to do. You know, they want to be great, and they want to perform, and they want to emote, and they want to cry, and they want to be scared. I mean, that's what they're doing the job for. I mean, the real actors. Some actors are there, you know, for the trailers and stuff, I imagine. But I don't work with them too much. I like to work with actors that like to be on set and to really do the work. And if you cast well and find those types of people, you know, they'll be your best supporters, and they'll be there for you.
Exclamation point, heart. It's a little like normal, right?
Yeah, I think it needs to go like that way, a bit of more of a sprawl. I'm going to have you write it quick. That's nice. Good. That's good.
Like 6 paper, take 1. Smart.
Okay, get yourself ready. Laugh it out. Action. Stay close. Good. All right. Once again. Okay, so I think actually you gotta just make one move to your mark.
Do you think I would look to see if someone's like leaving? Like who the fuck did that?
You could do that as you get there, but I think what you would do is you come through and you see it and come right for it if you can, one move, and pause there, look, and then grab this and go. Okay? Let's try that. All right? Let's shoot one. Okay, and cut. Good. Great. You okay? Okay. I think let's guys, let her slam the door and come out. Let's figure out where you go.
Slam the door, my leg. What? Do I let him in or close him out?
Okay, we're going with you this. let him out. Keep him out.
It was amazing.
Yeah?
It was really fun. That was my first trashing of a room in film and in real life. It gave me a second wind, and it's what, 4 in the morning? And I was like falling asleep, and now wakes you up. It was great. It was a really cool experience.
Hey guys, before you go, if you hear me scream cut, just freeze, okay? Okay. And action!
Leave me alone!
Cut! 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 Are you okay?
Awesome. Oh my god.
Reflection solved.
I could have done that, shoot. That's not a problem. Look how sick this looks.
You okay?
Bam!
It's great. Ready to do it again.
Okay, let's just do one. This is the last one for the choke. Okay, this is what we need. We just gotta get that a little better.
This is poured resin, so I put like a cookie sheet. I mixed this like pourable clear resin, poured it into the bottom, stuck a sheet of Mylar down, and then covered it over in resin again. And when I dried, it was like these flexible sheets. So you get something that you can do this with. It'll look a little more like that.
This is what it's like working on Black Swan.
I think every little girl wants to put on a pink tutu and run around, and it's so fun. So yeah, I think I did. I never wanted to be a professional ballerina. I definitely don't want to be a professional ballerina now. I can honestly tell you I would not have done this movie if Darren wasn't directing it. And this is not to go to Darren's head, okay? The character in the film is so complicated. Such a complicated story to tell that I don't know if easily in the wrong hands it would be very cheesy and very silly, and I don't know how many directors could pull this off. So because of Darren's the reason I did it. I've never had to die. I've been raped, I've been shot at, I've blown up in a house, but I've never died, like, on screen. So I'm really excited.
Okay, let's give it a shot.
This is it?
Yeah, use the thinner blood.
Yes.
But just use more force. Just try more force.
Yeah.
Try one more time before we clean her up. No, you gotta force harder.
That's bullshit.
And there you go.
Good job. Larry did it. Okay.
I've been studying ballet years ago, so I kind of knew that world a bit. Then I've watched more than movies about it. I watched like a few documentaries, of course. That was very helpful. But I went to the opera in Paris. You know, I worked a bit with Mikhail Baryshnikov. I've seen him work with dancers. I went to see Peter Martins directing his dancers, and I went to see rehearsals of the New York City Ballet too. And something appeared very, very fast is that the key of the character was narcissism. If you're really passionate about what you do, I guess it really does excuse a bit of what you are and the way you behave. That's the way I did it.
Not so stiff. Don't be afraid of him. Your mission is destruction through seduction. And now, fly!
I don't know. I mean, some people work differently, but you know, I think actors have to find their own way to work. You know, a set is a very special place, and you need to be able to find your freedom without being a weight for anybody else. And so it's how do you interact with that environment, and it's different all the time. Adapt and stay yourself. You know. Well, you need to be relaxed. I think that's the most important thing. You know. And to enjoy the moment.
At last, I can see the black swan.
Cut. Good. Go again.
I mean, everybody's got its own way to concentrate, to focus, I guess. But if you spend more energy pretending you're focusing, you know, then it's really no use. And I guess a lot. Actually, I did it too. I went on sets like. But you know, then I realized that it takes too much energy, and I can do it in another way.
Here we go, places, please.
I mean, it's so vicious on the body, and yet you never see it. It's like you see this beautiful image, and underneath it is some really, really sort of grotesque detail. That's another thing in ballet in general, is like just seeking this perfection, and there's a real beauty to it because it's all ephemeral, you know, everything is in a performance. It's not captured on film forever most of the time. It's not captured anywhere. It exists for a moment as beauty does.
It's just too bad at the end.
No, that's all right. I could cut around that.
Good.
What's important for me is the arms.
Yeah.
Just help her with the arms a little.
Look in the direction that you're going. Don't look back. Let's take 10.
And they're all striving for that moment of perfection. You know, they'll work tirelessly and destroy themselves to find that perfection.
I didn't know you could be a ballerina as a career until I was about 14.
Yeah. My grandma was a ballet dancer.
My mother was a ballet dancer.
And my sisters.
Sisters.
We're just masochistic people. We like hurting ourselves and getting emotional.
Pennsylvania Ballet.
Please come support the art.
We're poor. Well done. Well done.
Well, yeah, but because I was really close to the dancers, and when they were like doing that really like fast dancing, you know, and they were breathing in a way they sounded like horses, you know. It was actually beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, when they were passing by us, you know, I was like over there in the corner. You could really
feel the energy.
Yeah, and it was like athletes.
Well, ballet is built on, 5 positions of the feet. You start at the bar. Every day, even professionals, you start with pliés and you move on to tendus. So, the ballet world is very regular and very repetitive and very predictable. There's a certain personality type that gravitates to that structure, because you always kind of know what you're in for that day, and it's this kind of personal pursuing an ideal, making your body achieve something that it's never really going to achieve, you're trying to get this beautiful line and rotate your legs completely 180 degrees, which really your body's not meant to do. You know right away if it's something that you're going to want to really do. Because it's so physically demanding and so kind of emotionally demanding, but at the same time, there's not anything that gives you such, it's definitely given me a life, and it's going to be hard to find something that fills the same place when I eventually have to hang it up.
Okay, let's get ready, please.
The time we had was very, very short. We had one day to shoot each of the big performances at the end, and you're basically putting on a huge show. And then, at night they had to do a turnaround and a turnover to the next act of the ballet, and then we'd have to come in and be ready to shoot. But of course, it would take a few hours to set up the lighting and all that. So it was really tough.
Cut. We'll go again.
Real quick, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Let's go again.
right away.
Right away.
Here we go.
We're shooting the final act of Swan Lake. End of the film. And I'm just thinking about shots I missed.
$116, Apple Echo, take 2. Mark?
And Darren, you want to hold the top of her hands like this, or? There?
Fan?
Okay. Ready and action, Nina.
It's fun to watch. It's fun to go on a roller coaster. It's kind of fun to watch someone lose their mind, as long as it's not you.
You make sure not to waste any of the resources you have in hand. You're forced very early on to make the decisions that you have to make. Whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent, you become committed to them and you make them work. And I think that fortunately, we made a lot of the right decisions. I think we made a better film. I really do.
But I think the only way to break in is by doing something very, very unique and original and personal, because that's what you have to offer, is a story that only you can tell. So you got to tell the story that you think that would be cool to you and your friends, basically, and from your corner of the earth, and then it may actually then connect with a lot of people. It will, if you put a humanity into it and what makes it special. It will connect.
Filmmakers today are starting to embrace that you can
add to your story and add to your narrative with these little sprinkled visual effects across the entire film, and they're not in your face, and they're not Transformers, and they're not dinosaurs, but they're there and they're prevalent today, not just in this film, but in a lot of films as well.
Darren's one of those directors where he still likes to do makeup effects. He likes to see something on set. He likes to see something there, which I think is the best of both worlds. Instead of a complete CG world, we have live action and digital working to its best.
You know, Look Effects delivered 300 visual effects for, you know, on this $13 million film. It was an incredibly challenging thing to do, and the complexity of the edit, of the score, all that stuff was really tight, and the difficulty was the limitation in money.
So with the Swan morph, like I said, there were two issues, technical and creative. From a technical standpoint, we knew we wanted to use motion capture. It was really important to keep the actual movement of the dancer for this Swan transformation. We knew there was going to be CG feathers that we were going to animate and we were going to build, but it was really important to have it tracked in there with the actual dance. So we set up a motion capture rig, putting tracking markers all over Sarah's body, setting up an array of motion capture cameras, and when she did her dance, we recorded those movements, which we then were able to translate into the 3D process for the feathers. It wasn't flawless and required a lot of hand tracking on top of it. We spent a lot of time working out what was the final state of her transformation. We knew that she was going to turn into some sort of swan, and it was a lot about how far can you take Nina towards a full swan before the idea kind of breaks apart. We knew the wings were the major part of it, but beyond that, we tried a lot of different things with her neck and her face and her head and her body, and we had a lot of iterations. And ultimately what we found was that the wings of a swan are gorgeous, and Natalie was so beautiful that you didn't really need more than that, you know, because in Nina's mind, this is a beautiful thing that's happening to her.
A lot of the process was figuring out what a swan wing looks like, what a swan feather looks like, sort of morph it to look more like the dancer's arm. I went to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I emailed them and they sent me scans, high-res scans of swan feathers. Those swan feather images were used as reference to build simple geometry in Maya. And each feather had a rig so that it could bend in various directions and flex. I took those feathers and placed them on the wing in logical groups. The lights are positioned based on a track in 3D. The tracking software picks up various points in the image that hopefully don't move too much. The chandeliers, the lights. It uses those points to reconstruct what the camera move was in 3D. And once I have that camera move reconstructed, I can start placing my lights based upon the camera solve. There were many versions of the feathers growing in different ways. You can see the final design we settled on. They grow along the shoulder here, but not so much on the chest. They have this graceful curve. That was something Darren really liked, but we didn't get there for a while. We tried all sorts of things.
You know, I think one of the exciting things about visual effects is that it is so much more accessible now than it used to be. You know, there are kids today, there are probably 10-year-old kids who are learning After Effects and starting to pick this stuff up and are gonna, you know, create the shots in the future that are gonna blow us away because they've been doing it their whole lives. You can get your hands on these tools and start to learn them, and once you start to learn them, if you've got the ideas and you've got the drive and desire to make great stuff, you can do it. And then once you prove yourself that you're an artist, you can find work and you can do this stuff.
I think the biggest influence on Black Swan is the ballet Swan Lake. We really went back to the myth of Swan Lake and looked at all the fairy tale elements. And I remember meeting with this dancer, Julie Kent, at the ABT, asking her, what exactly is she? You know, what is the Queen Swan? And, you know, she said, well, she's kind of half human, half, you know, swan. And that immediately made me realize, oh, this is a Where Swan movie. I started to get really excited. And that was one of the most exciting things, is the transformation we were going to take Natalie through to turn her into a creature.
Literally.
Literally.
You know, I had a guy in my shop look at the effects list and say, oh, you know, there's a lot of effects. And then he looked at the date next to each effect, and they were all on the same day. You know, so January, 30th, there were 6 different complicated effects, scenes that had to be filmed. So there wasn't a lot of time to prep everything. So it was a real guerrilla style way of filmmaking. It was a real R&D to figure out how to make all these even symmetrical rashes without covering Natalie's back in a big appliance. Because when you cover someone, no matter how soft the piece is, it looks, especially in a moving back, especially in a ballerina's moving back, you'll see little crinkles and strange things in it. I would actually put some glue on Natalie, put the actual mold on her skin, and peel the mold off. So you're getting direct from mold to the skin appliance. And within 5-10 minutes, the makeup was done.
Guys, where's Rothbard?
It wasn't just like a crazy monster or something. I actually based a lot of the design of Rothbard on there was a drawing that Michelangelo had done of a satyr where it was this demonic face where his nose was crushed and his high cheekbones and things, and I used that as some of my reference for Rothbard. And you can see he's got like a very strong features. The dancer Sergio had a lot of prosthetics on. He had a fake nose, a beak, an upper lip, a chin, lower lip, a whole forehead, horns, a whole deal. And he turns into a bird, when he's dancing. You see him every now and then. Okay, I'll talk about it. There was a scene where Natalie was supposed to peel off her cheek, and it was supposed to be like an onion. She kept peeling one cheek after another, and we had done a little test, and it was pretty successful, and we were going to tweak some things here and there. I had to sculpt one big appliance, and then like a smaller one, and it was just kind of peeling. And he didn't want blood. Didn't want blood in that. He wanted it to be like an onion kind of thing.
We bake these. Probably more towards the corner.
We made some fake legs that would bend backwards. Darren wanted her legs to bend backwards like a bird's leg anatomy. We made some fiberglass legs that we could manipulate and bend backwards. They were tweaked digitally later to make them look shrunken.
And unsure yourself, something's weird, and right leg, left, and fall. Good. And cut. Right. Check the gate.
Be sleepless nights and last minute things. That's what a good director does, and as a demanding director as he is and as cool as he is, he's a very visual guy, and he knows what he wants, to see, and you have to keep up with Darren to take part in one of his films.
Ooh, that's a little creepy looking. When you put a body next to it, it suddenly becomes so much more real. Look at that. Oh my gosh. The illusion just changes, doesn't it?
Attack it! Attack it! Come on!
You had to dance with the camera a lot.
Yeah, it was one of the most important things, I think, performance-wise. And I think the fact that both operators that we had were really incredible people was really helpful too, because I think the ability that I could like be communicating with the person behind the camera was like super important. That there was this sort of emotional connection. And I mean, you're the person behind the camera too. That there's
But
that.
we had no emotional connection.
No, we have no emotional connection. Just general anger.
Yeah, exactly. It's emotional in its own way.
No, but I think that that's really helpful to have. It's like having a scene partner even when you don't necessarily have someone right there. An actor, I mean, opposite you. And also, yeah, they're dancing with you. And so their coordination
Sweating
and
all over the place.
move.
Big men.
Yeah. I mean, it's their grace is as important as anything.
Your dancing. Tell me, what was your background? Because I know you were
Do you
big
know the
fan.
answer to this?
I do, but I want to hear it for them.
I did ballet and other dancing too. I did like tap and like theater kind of Fosse stuff, jazz, until I was like 13. And then when I started acting more, I stopped because, as you know, I'm very extreme and I don't want to be the one taking like one class a week. I want to be the one in there like every day.
Were you doing it a lot?
6 days a week, like a couple hours a day. Not just ballet, but some sort of dance.
Did any of that stuff stick?
Yeah, I think there was some basis that Mary Helen Bowers, who, as you know, trained me, and all of the other coaches and everything could work with.
Right.
But I think there's a sense of coordination and that kind of thing that you get from that early exposure to it. But I mean, in many ways, it was like starting from scratch.
How was your turnout?
Good turnout.
Good turnout.
Good turnout. But other things were a mess. I mean, Mary Helen worked with me for like a month on my pronation of my feet and like not lifting my heels when I plied.
Tell me about the different coaches you went through.
Well, Mary Helen was the one who started with me a year before, and we just did 5 hours a day of ballet and sort of cross-training to try and make sure that I wouldn't get injured going into the stuff too quickly because it's so harsh on the body. So we did a lot of swimming and weight training as well. And when I got to New York, I started working with Michelle Rodriguez a little bit too, who does gyrotonics, and she sort of was working specifically on my arms and getting everything open because there's such a specific posture and look to the arms. And then they brought in Marina to do classes with me and Olga to do classes and Georgina Parkinson. And she did all the specific swan arm kind of stuff.
That evil force is pulling you that you can't escape. That's just like out of your control.
And Benjamin, obviously, the choreographer. It's like really the dream people sort of giving me these sort of pointers. And then, I mean, Mary Helen was just there like every second, warming me up, giving me small pointers. I mean, things that, like, I don't think I realized how much was like here too, that some of the most important notes were about where my head was placed or where my eyes were looking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nina. It's very nice.
And then through all that, you were able to emote. How hard was that?
Like half of the time they were trying to get me just to close my mouth while I was dancing because it's like you're concentrating so hard on what you're doing that like your tongue is sticking out and your mouth's open. That was definitely more challenging than I could have ever expected.
Ready, Mark?
When I started to make films, I thought that it would be interesting to set something in the ballet world. A setting that is very rich and interesting, but not very visited by movies. Costumes were designed by Amy Westcott. Amy kind of had the challenge of taking these ballet costumes and trying to spread them out into the real world so that everything kind of connected and came together.
It was a lot of just making sure that the costumes are completely visible on set and really standing out and looking amazing. And for us, it was just a brand new, fresh take on Swan Lake.
We did basically a Swan Lake ballet, which you'll see unfolding throughout the film. There's different parts. There's a romantic tutu, pancake tutus.
We did the black swan, white swan. We were, the job that we had was to reconceptualize and design the ballet costumes for Swan Lake, which is very classical ballet, but to do it so it fit the world of this film.
There's a real beauty to it. Amy's stuff with the Rodarte was really just fluid and well blended.
It was something fresh that we wanted to show, and there was pieces that were added to them so that they wouldn't seem run-of-the-mill classic. So there was tulle and feathers and, additions to their sort of classic vibe. Everybody has their unique sort of personality, and a lot of the times you see them in a wide shot and you see their personality through their clothes.
He promised to feature me more this season.
Well, he should. You've been there long enough. And you're the most dedicated dancer in the company.
Her mother sort of has a big influence on what she looks like. It's sort of keeping her in a childlike state. Her basic colors were really white, gray, and pink. And we were doing heavy on the pink, doing this sort of childlike thing, and really squeezing the pink out by the end. So, her arc, even though it's just a couple of weeks really, was putting some black in the end, and, making sure that it looks a little bit more serious, and that, there's one time where she wears black tights instead of pink tights, and that's that one, snap, when she's finally sort of on the other side of the fence.
She's starting to rebel a little bit against all of these strictures.
I'm Lily. You're gonna be amazing.
I watch the way she moves. Sensual. She's not faking it.
Lily has a sort of a sexy confidence about her, and she had to, we had to put a lot of black in. Some silver and gray.
What's up? Lily has what Nina wants, which is this freedom to express herself. That becomes the kind of friction between the two of them.
Stop. Please stop.
It was challenging to work on because we're working with something that's so well known. Swan Lake's probably one of the most famous ballets, and to make it unique and make it special to this film, and you have to believe this complex psychology that develops throughout the film, and the costumes really tell that story.
I think Darren likes to dive into the world and get it right. So when he dives, we all dive right after him.
Let's go again. Okay, stand by, please. Here we go.
Therese Dupree is a production designer that I've wanted to work with for years, and she's turned me down film after film after film. She says it was because schedule, but I don't believe her. Finally, I got a chance to work with her, and it was a great collaboration.
We open our season with Swan Lake. Done to death, I know, but not like this.
One of the joys of working with Darren Aronofsky is how organic he approaches his films. And as Darren and I started to talk about Swan Lake and the stage set, and how abstracted we wanted that to be and how modern we wanted that to be, it started moving towards a very, very specified, minimal look.
I had the craziest dream last night about a girl who was turned into a swan, but her prince falls for the wrong girl and she kills herself.
The one thing I really wanted to do was get away from the computer and be outside and be inspired by what is outside. And it not only was the trees, but I started to see the palette of the film in terms of Swan Lake. And one of the important things that Darren and I really worked hard for was to get movement in the set pieces. We did not want any stagnant, still pieces. Everything has a touch of photorealism throughout, again, to make it a little more modern, a little more unexpected. And I've gone out of my way to make sure that there's a little bit of the Swan Lake stage set in almost every location. In Leroy's apartment, you'll see that it's all black and white. You'll see that there's a lot of tree imagery or nature imagery. In Leroy's office, I actually had a sample of the cliff in the background and some rolled up drawings, all very subtle, but it's a common thread that I've tried to keep throughout the movie into each location. And I always put together a palette very early in the movie so that all the department heads, my department, wardrobe, lighting, were all in sync for that particular look, because it will affect the entire movie.
She was able to really create a big canvas for us. It's a very controlled palette.
Black, white, silvers, grays, greens, and pinks. Nina's room in the apartment is actually the only warm place in the apartment. It's pink. It's the only time we're using a little bit of warmth in there. But it'll be very obvious that it's a child's room, and the control that her mother has on her, you can sense just from the production design in that room.
Oh, almost done.
We also wanted to use mirrors in the film.
In the world of ballet, there's mirrors everywhere. Dancers are always looking at themselves. And so their relationship to their reflection is a huge part of who they are. And in Black Swan, it kind of takes on a whole nother meaning. And so visually, we really are pushing what it means to look in a mirror. And when you translate that into cinema, you know, you can start to do some really scary, frightening, unsettling things.
It's really about the arc of Natalie's character in these environments.
Mark. And
Very nice. Go again.
it all started when we were editing Requiem for a Dream. A script came in by Heinz. It was called The Understudy. It was kind of all about Eve meets The Double by Dostoevsky, and I liked it as an idea, and I immediately had the idea that it might be able to transfer into the ballet world. And I always think that that's a really exciting place to set a film, is in a setting that is very rich and interesting, but not very visited by movies. We really wanted to make it a visual treat for audiences.
The Black Swan stole your love. There's only one way to end the pain.
I'm working again with Maddie Libatique, who I work with on Pi, Requiem for a Dream, and The Fountain.
Thank you, Maddie.
We took a lot of the energy of what we did on The Wrestler and then sort of connected it to a more luxurious visual sense and kind of created its own look. Black Swan is actually very much a companion piece of The Wrestler. Mickey Rourke as a wrestler is very similar to Natalie Portman as a ballet dancer, and they're both artists that use their bodies, and where age really threatens them and physical injury threatens them, and the only kind of tool they have is their bodies to express themselves. They look a lot different, but they're kind of united with a similar type of film stock and approach to how we were going to shoot it. I was kind of excited to shoot handheld, to do the entire film handheld, so that it had that kind of documentary, cinema verite feel. I really liked working with a camera operator who could move, because you can move the camera really freely and come up with interesting shots. My mentor always told me how to make them laugh, cry, or scare the out of them. And so I wanted to try the scary one. It's got kind of elements of horror, elements of drama, elements of paranoia. Everything kind of connected and came together.
He picked me, Mommy. Do you hear me? I would be the new Swan Queen. Well, I'll be home soon. I just wanted to let you know. I love you too. Darren and I talked about doing a ballet film 8 years ago. He came up and met me at school. I was 20, and it sort of took this long to gestate and get to where it is. There were all these layers sort of building up to shooting.
At last, I can see the black swan. Good. Cut.
The script was really interesting, and it sort of parallels to the Swan Lake stories.
You what?
Want to be perfect. She's dedicated and obsessed and hardworking, but it's not letting her be free enough or sensual enough.
It's also about letting go.
The thing about being an artist is being unique and having your own special voice, and she really starts seeing herself everywhere, and her identity sort of bleeds out. Over the years, I sort of kept up with dance classes here and there, and then 6 months ago, I started serious ballet training. It was definitely challenging beyond the technique, which was really, really challenging, obviously. You know, I really was lucky that Mary Helen Bowers, who trained me, was really, really attentive to making sure I was always warmed up properly, and that we did all these exercises like that I would never have thought of. You don't see all of the work that goes into the smallest of gestures. So that was really interesting, and to see how they direct you through it. I mean, it is a lot of acting, which was helpful, because that was the part that I was like, oh, I've at least done this before.
Well, I think Natalie had this really hard job that not only did she have to dance and be convincing as a ballet dancer, but she also had to, act the scenes that were happening while she was dancing. And there was a lot of emotional choices she had to make.
It's amazing, after sort of letting it develop for so long, to still find new things after like 8 years working on it. It was pretty cool.
Where have you been?